Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host. Today I am delighted to welcome to the show Dan Roberts, who is a partner and business expert, business advisor at Cotton Chartered Accountants in Northampton. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi Chris, thanks for the introduction. Good to be here.
Great, well, thanks for coming on, Dan, especially as we are in obviously COVID lockdown. So, we've decided to release this not only as a podcast but also as a video, so thanks for agreeing to come on. And as we were both literally joking before this started, we both have the faces for radio, so we will muck our way through this as best as we can. So Dan, what is customary within each episode and each interview that we do, we like to give our wonderful dear listeners a quick career background to help sort of explain and shape the journey that you've been on to get where you are and obviously do what you do. The sort of great news is that this is a really short piece because you are basically and have been pretty much working for Cotton's Accountants for all of your career, pretty much. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, no, that is right, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I went to university, I was up in Leeds, did a degree in economics, finished that, and then, as most people do, you float around, a little bit, got a job then in recruitment, only really because it was quite a nice salary. And
sure.
At that point in time, well, I thought, I like a bit of that. Spent probably 8 months there. Then actually I thought, I want a career.
Yeah.
I actually want something that I could see me through and have a career and have some challenges within it. And I decided to write to all the accountancy firms in Northampton. One of those firms then who actually answered my letter with my CV was Cotton's.
Yeah.
And the rest is history, really. So started off as a trainee and now we're a partner within the firm.
Well, I think that's just a fantastic lesson there, full stop, isn't it? For any students or anybody that's even considering a career change at whatever age, especially now where people are being made redundant or furloughed or, considering their options. Nothing wrong with writing letters, emails, and sending it out within a business region, following it up presumably afterwards to make sure it's been received. And you never know, 10, 20 years later from trainee and sitting your exams, becoming an accountant and a specialist to then partner and who knows what happens in the future. Yeah, no,
exactly right. Actually, to be a bit speculative sometimes works and actually, paid off.
Yeah, no, good, bravo. And so for those that haven't come across Cotton's before, talk to us about Cotton's. So, where are you based and, what's a typical client look like and a business owner look like for Cotton's?
Yeah, fair enough. So Cotton's itself has been around for about 35 years. We're established in Northampton, Rugby, Daventry, Milton Keynes, down in London. We have about 80 within the team, professionals working with a wide variety of clients. Mostly SMEs, and that's what we specialise in. But we do personal tax returns all the way through to looking after subsidiaries for billion-dollar groups, based within the UK, and everything else in between along that route. Typically SME market.
And what about you? So presumably you're working with that same broad range?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So my own client base, people I look after. So in the main, I'm looking at people within the motor industry, so various motor factors, big groups within there, people within manufacturing, people involved in professional services, around some of the ancillary services that feed into motor and manufacturing services. So, again, quite a diverse mix, quite a diverse set of people within there across a variety of industry types.
And I guess that's probably one of the reasons why Cottons and also you joined the Silverstone Technology Cluster, which is, for those that are listening to this for the first time, is a specialist business and technology community in the heart of Northamptonshire and based on Silverstone Race Circuit, which is where my business Longhurst is also based. So your flavour, your specialism in sort of motorsport stroke manufacturing fits neatly there, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, personally, I have an interest in motorsport anyway, and I'm a bit of a geek in the fact that I like to know how things are made, and I'm interested in those type of processes and all those sort of bits. So actually, it comes hand in hand to work and to be part of, something like the STC, and to try and work and partner with firms who are providing innovation, in various industries, cutting edge technologies. I quite like that. It's quite good. And to be able to work with those sort of firms, offering some services like, say, R&D tax credits to help support those along the way, going to get real interesting.
And presumably you've got clients based on Silverstone already, is that right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so we work with a number of clients there already. We've got a couple of contacts already based within STC, like yourself, Chris. We work with. So it's quite a vibrant community down there, and it's good to be a part of it.
Good. Really good. And so, obviously, present day, it's now April the 6th, 2020. And so clearly we're in the middle of, it's now beginning of week 3 of lockdown.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of business owners as clients, a number are based on Silverstone Park, but also just geographically all over the country. I know how they're feeling about their personal wealth, but also their business. You must be really at the sharp end of it as an accountant stroke business advisor.
Yeah.
What's it like out there at the moment?
Yeah, these are unprecedented times at the moment. I don't think any of us have seen anything quite like this in our lives, and it's difficult. There are people right at the sharp end at the moment, and it's difficult to see some light at the end of the tunnel. We've had a lot of good news that's come out of the government in terms of what reliefs that they offer. However, there are delays in actually seeing some physical cash come through. Do we know how long it's going to last for? We're 2 weeks in of a 3-week lockdown. I think that's going to be at least another 4 weeks, at least another 8 weeks potentially, until we start getting back to a little bit of normality. But obviously that puts a lot of uncertainty in terms of, what does a business look like in there? Some sectors are facing the challenge a little bit more, or weathering the challenge a bit easier than others. But it will have a big ripple effect throughout the whole economy. So I think we're going to see the implications of this probably for years to come.
And so presumably part of the reason there's a delay is that the government have to create infrastructure, systems and processes to be able to assess and then issue whatever benefit it is, whether it be to an individual or to a business. Presumably that's the reason for the delay.
Yeah, that certainly is part of the delay. We're looking at the process now. Let's take furloughed workers as a good porting call with that. Great that the announcement has been made for the government to cover 80% of wage costs, capped at $2,500 per month for an employee. But actually, to be able to deliver that, there needs to be systems in place, there needs to be a portal in place, for them to record that information so that they can make the payments, cross-reference that to their own RTI payroll systems, etc., and so forth from there. So, apparently they're working around the clock to be able to get those systems up and running. I can't imagine it's easy to do that, given the fact that there's going to be millions of people put onto this furlough system at some point in time.
And so furloughing, I think a lot of people will now have a rough, broad idea of what furloughing is because of just the sheer volume of communications on social media and in the press. But for those that are still potentially unsure, what is furloughing, and for anybody running a business that just wants reassurance, in simple terms, what is it? How does it work? Is the company paying, continues to pay, an income for 80%, and then they could get a refund or a rebate from the government? How does it actually work in reality?
Yeah, so just to give you that sort of snapshot overview of what we're looking at here. I mean, it's a job retention scheme, in essence. Businesses impacted by this COVID-19 virus, if that's causing you pressure in terms of, actually I've got to look at staff redundancies, we're saying, can we keep the staff? Or the government's saying, can we keep the staff? We will then give you a grant for 80% of their wage costs, capped at £2,500. That wage cost is obviously gross, includes employers' national insurance and employer pension contributions under the auto enrolment scheme. And if you were to do that, we will give you 80% back as a grant once this portal is up and running, and we can then factor in receipts thereafter. I mean, what we're looking at, I mean, if we just go back to that, so we're looking at an 80% refund then on those total wage costs. How quickly that's going to come to materialise goes back to the previous question, I suppose, through on there. If we're taking an employee, they've got to be furloughed for 3 weeks. So, pretty much a full month's pay we're looking at there. If we're paid weekly, it can be a bit of a cash flow burden on some people. Portal's not ready yet, so we're not going to get the funds through. If we're paid monthly, we're hoping this portal's going to be open before the end of April. Payments then start to trickle through end of April, early May. So I think we've just got to be very mindful of the fact that come the end of this month, there could be a bit of a real cash burden on small business before these grants start to come through. And it is a grant, so it's not something that needs to be repaid back once we get through the other side of this.
Okay. What other types of funding mechanisms are there? Grant support. So what does that look like? Additional grant support to businesses, especially those that are in different sectors like hospitality, for example?
Yeah, so there are grants available through the local authorities, and they're going to be the organisations who are taking the lead on delivering these grants. So if you're a small business and you are currently able to claim small business rate relief, then you'll be looking at a 10k grant from the local authority.
Okay.
If you're in retail, leisure, tourism, actually we'll be looking at a 25k grant over that period of time. Again, they are now starting to trickle through. Some of the local authorities are starting to make inquiries into who they've got on their rates register, so we call it, and asking them to make applications. So I think we'll see those start coming through in full over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, so potentially before furloughing money comes through, perhaps.
Hopefully, that's the intention. What I would suggest, if anybody's got any queries, is to get onto their local authority website to see where they're going to be pointed to. Not necessarily on the phone, because I think they're all understaffed anyway, and you'll probably be on the queue. The website's usually got some decent information.
Okay, and what about other sort of forms of tax deferment? VAT, personally, corporately, what types of deferments out there?
Yeah, well, current VAT payments have been deferred. So any VAT liability that's due for payment from 20th of March, I believe it was, through to the end of June, has now been deferred until the end of March 21. Okay. So that will be a bit of an ease on cash flow. I mean, we say deferred, so it's not going to disappear. We will be at some point, but hopefully when we're through the other side and profits start to recover, we'll generate enough cash to be able to do that. On the personal front, okay, well, our self-assessment tax payments, for those who've got any second payments on account due in July, will be postponed until January next year. So at least personally, that will put a bit more cash in the pocket. And if we have got taxes out there that people are struggling with, so corporation tax, for example, maybe you pay as you earn national insurance payments as well, before we get any grants back for the furlough. I'd advise to talk to HMRC, ring the business payment support line. They are open to time to pay arrangements at the moment. So I think it's something that, particularly everyone should be considering, sort of during this time period.
Okay, and so as a business owner, anything else that is potentially available to us?
Yeah, we've got the business interruption loans. How easy and accessible they are is yet to be determined. I'd advise, if you think you're going to be short of working capital, talk to your bank manager, get an application in, get it started at least. There will be various bits of data that they're going to need. So, talk to your accountant, start pulling that together, get your accounts done, have a look at what your current cash flow needs are. Don't be too prudent. If you're going for a loan, actually make sure you go for the right amount. What you don't want to be is caught short, 3 weeks after a loan and thought, I wish I asked for another 20k. Be realistic with that. Assume worst case scenario and work from there, in essence.
And what about things like personal guarantees on those bank loans?
Well, it's been in the news recently with regards to personal guarantees, and I think the general view of government is that banks shouldn't be asking for personal guarantees. I think what we'll probably find, it's going to be on a bank case-by-case basis.
Sure.
I wouldn't necessarily want to be. It'll leave a bit of bad taste in people's mouths, I think, if personal guarantees.
Yeah, especially as they were bailed out in 2008, right?
Yeah,
by taxpayers. What else? So, what about businesses that potentially really at the sharp end, and from a cash perspective, very cash poor, didn't have any type of buffers in place, can't wait 3 or 4 weeks, let alone even 3 or 4 days, that are facing the realistic option of closing. What advice could you give them? Pathways to follow, advisors to talk to, disaster planning. What can we do?
I mean, if you're in that sort of scenario, I think you've got to talk to your accountants. Talk to your business advisors. I think you've got to be doing that now. If your current people can't help, give us a buzz. We're always open. We're open for business. We're working from home, and we're always here to help if we can. I mean, these are really challenging times. Now, if you look to the SME market, and if you just looked at those director shareholders who are on minimum pay for tax advantages, why not? Been enjoying those for years, but actually now in a scenario where there's potentially not a lot of government support out there at all. And this, really sort of crucial times for those firms, because potentially there's no cash coming in at all, and we're not going to get any government grants, despite the fact that we've been paying a lot of corporation tax and a lot of VAT and etc. Personal tax for the last sort of few years. So in those sort of scenarios, talk to your accountants, have a look what reserves you've got left in the company. How can we get those out efficiently? Where does our exposure sit? Is there any personal guarantees that the company's being caught with, existing personal guarantees that need to be managed out in any sort of scenario? Speak to an IP firm, a consulting practitioner firm. If you can't get hold of the accountants, you need a little bit of advice, because they're out there too, who are helping who are helping through. Personally, look at your own finances, talk to your mortgage company. We are hoping that actually once we get through this, it will be back to business as usual. How quickly that happens and how quickly we get back to business as usual, is up in the air. But if we can keep as much cash as possible, defer out some payments, take some holidays as and when where we can, try and apply for universal credit even, although you've probably been in the queue with another 1 million people who have already done the same sort of thing, then I think that's all we can do at this stage.
Turn your phone off.
Yeah, sorry. That's
rookie error. Come on, Dan. No, it's fine.
That's real smart.
Is it? Well, we'll blame Will. Okay, so, and you said you raised the thing about mortgage payment holidays, so that's 3 months, right? So people can take a 3-month payment holidays subject to the bank agreeing to it. I think a lot of banks are now doing online applications that are fast track through. I know I've got a number of clients who've done that for the simple purpose of just further increasing their cash buffer. So yeah, very, very prudent. I think what one of my takeaways from this, and I think there's going to be some sort of deep learning from both sort of private investors and savers, but also business owners, is cash buffers. and the real need to ensure. I mean, we always advise as a firm of financial planners to personally have at least 3 to 6 months worth of net salary in a sort of sleep easy disaster fund for moments exactly like this, where potentially redundancies kick in or there's a reduction in income. And so before you need to start worrying about credit cards or going for government grants or anything like that, you've already got the reserve there to last half a year. Et cetera, et cetera. So I think hopefully, certainly with the clients I'm working with, it's not so much a problem because a lot of them have it in place. But I think for most of the UK population, hopefully there'll be some really good learning. That's actually you need to delay gratification, stop spending money on shit that you don't need. Make sure you've got your cash buffer in place so that if this happens again, which it will, because on average these types of events happen in 6 or 7 years on average. It's been a while since 2008, but that you're ready and prepared.
Yeah, I mean that's right. Keep that in reserve. Sometimes in the business, a good rule of thumb, if you can do it, is have working capital reserves of around 3 to 6 months. Not everyone can do that. Appreciate that. Sure. If you can do it. If you know what I mean. And have that sort of plan in place. Have those working capital cash flows. Just to hand it. It's good practice. See what it looks like. So. When you get to situations and scenarios like this, you can do some planning around it in a shorter period of time.
I think clearly we're both professional advisors, so I'm always going to say this, but having the right team around you, whoever that is. So if you're listening to this and you've got your own financial planner, which is great, and you've got your own firm of accountants, great. You need to make sure that they're working together and that they're working with you and are providing you advice like this. And I say that because I was chatting to a very young business owner who was referred to me by a big bank a year ago, and one of the very first things I installed into him was about savings behaviour and emergency buffers. And I was speaking to him last week just to catch up, as I'm doing with all my clients on a weekly basis, just to make sure they're all tickety-boo. And he was like, the one thing going through my mind, Chris, was your voice saying 3 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Yeah. Trust me, 3 to 6 months. And I was like, because it's the right thing to do. So, for those listening to this, if you haven't got a team of advisors around you, accountant, tax, legal, financial planning, then you need to really consider putting that in place, because it could be the difference between success and failure ultimately, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it spot on there, because it's more like working in partnership, more than anything else. It's not a case. What you don't want is one touch a year, because I think that's bad. That's bad advice. One touch a year. You've got to know your client. You've got to know them well, not just for business, but what they want personally as well, so you can tailor your services to help them. That's the real sort of key to it, and that's where the enjoyment comes from as well. Actually really be a part of the business. And offer some support. You can offer guidance, and you can be proactive. Rather than maybe firefighting or reacting to something after date. I always think it's poor form if you've told someone, for example, your tax is 30k and it's due next week. I mean, what you should be saying is the tax is 30k and it's due in 2022. It's that sort of level of sort of forecasting and knowledge that you want to get into.
Planning. Yeah, future planning. So a lot of the inquiries we get from the banks, for example, are from business owners who aren't getting that type of relationship. And so you guys know this because I'm passed the referrals on. They're working with accountants who they hardly see. Certainly the newer businesses, that they weren't made aware of how personal tax regime works. January, July splits through to VAT, through to corporation tax, and these are basic things that a professional and a forward-thinking professional should be delivering. So, I highly endorse that. So I think, Dan, I'm going to start pulling this to a close because we're sort of 23 minutes in. We've had a good gas bag about Cottons, and so just to repeat, Cottons are based in Northampton Town Centre, Daventry, Rugby, are branching off into Milton Keynes, Silverstone, and clearly the Silverstone Technology Cluster. And you've also got an office down in London, actually near our London office, which is great. Business owners of all different sizes, as well as individual taxpayers that need self-assessment advice and stuff like that. I endorse Cottons because I refer quite a few clients to Cottons and vice versa. So I highly endorse Cottons for those listening to this. clearly, for any more support and guidance on COVID government-backed initiatives, if you haven't got confidence in the team of accountants that you're currently working with, then Dan's available. So I'll make sure his contact details are in the show notes so people can find you. I'm going to make sure this is aired on STC's website and on YouTube, so because obviously it's very, very present at the moment. So clearly, anybody needs any support, let us know. I'm going to close off, Dan. What's normally traditional after we've had a good, positive, fun podcast interview is I want to embarrass you a bit. And so I always close off with 2 questions. The first is the embarrassing one, which is about you sharing an embarrassing story.
Okay.
This is important, Dan, because you're probably going to have colleagues listening to this and fellow partners, including a certain Will Smart. So what is your embarrassing story that you're prepared to share with our wonderful listeners?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't get embarrassed that easily, to be fair. But one lesson that I've got in life is never trust a 4-year-old around a button. And I say that from we did a trip to France, and we were on a ferry going over, and little one, 4 at the time, needed the toilet. So we go to toilet on the ferry, right opposite big gangway of gallery of chairs. So we're sitting in there, well, I might as well go while we're here as well. Little man's walking around the toilet. Dad, what's this red button? Don't.
Oh no.
I think that says it all, doesn't it?
Oh no.
You know?
Oh no.
Then from someone who was so eager to press the button, to then want to press it again, not interested.
Oh my God, how embarrassing. Presumably a few people saw you, right?
Yeah, just a couple of hundred. That's
just a couple hundred people on. Yeah. That's the beginning of their holiday. Was
beginning. That's a nice. I like to think it's a nice treat for them.
Nice,
nice little anecdote for them. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
right, last question, sir. Life advice. So we know we have students listening to this that are studying at local tech colleges, universities, and what have you in the region. So life advice for a younger version of Dan Roberts. So let's take us back to when you weren't working at Cotton's and you were going through uni or finishing university off. What one bit of key advice would you give yourself, and why?
I think an important value in life, and this is for work and this is for everything else really, is just to have some integrity in yourself and in beliefs in what you're interested in. Actually, if you follow that, you're respectful, hardworking, truthful, be honest, and actually that will stand you in good stead, not only in business but personally. And it's a key fundamental to me. It's a key fundamental to Cotton's. So that's what I would tell any young person out there who would like to listen. Have some integrity. Be a good egg. Yeah. Be a good egg. Dan Roberts from Cotton's, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you giving up sort of 20-30 minutes, especially when you're obviously bombarded with a lot of client work at the moment. So we do appreciate that. As I said, I'm going to put your contact details in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out to Dan and get any advice, I'm sure he'll make himself available to do that. What I'm also going to do, Dan, is invite you back on in the future to do a sort of collaborative mastermind session with a few other professional advisors. I think there's more in this conversation around COVID and business continuity, and we're in it together, not alone. Mentality. Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I'll have a think about who else we can invite to that, and we'll happen. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris, for having us on. Cool. And everyone keep safe. Speak to you soon, sir. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Thanks. The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.